Since April, Nicaragua in Central America has sunk deeper and deeper into political crisis. Scenes of brutal repression by President Daniel Ortega's government have been shared on social media. They've sparked an even greater and greater uprising by the people across the entire country of Nicaragua, demanding Ortega's ouster and a return to democracy and the rule of law. Mercedes Gallego has joined us before. She's an award-winning journalist who was born and raised in Spain, but has lived abroad as a foreign correspondent for over 2 decades. She has just returned from covering the really grave, horrific situation going on in Nicaragua. So tell us, Mercedes, and thanks for coming on, I appreciate it, how and where did this violence start in Nicaragua?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me in the show and for talking about what it really matters. This is why I went to Nicaragua last month. I was, from here, I was following the news about the racing that started on April 19th. There was a peaceful protest in April 18th, and the next day the government chose to repress them with the snipers.
What were they protesting on April 19th, and who was protesting?
The first protest that week, it started by the elders, actually. The government was reforming Social Security to raise their contributions and lower their pensions. The police, it was very violent, and the students got very outraged seeing their elders sit up and bleed in the street.
Daniel Ortega, he's basically the dictator now of Nicaragua. Is this the same Daniel Ortega? We remember him from the 1980s with the Iran-Contra affair. Reagan was financing the opposition, I guess. Is that what happened?
Yes, it was called the Contra. At the time, the U.S. saw the Sandinista revolution in Nicaragua as an advance of communism, and started to financing a counter-revolution with death squads that were organized from Honduras and El Salvador, and created a civil war throughout the 80s that was financed with the money that the Reagan administration was getting from illegally selling or buying oil from Iran. That was a big scandal politically in the U.S. and ended up financing a civil war in Central America. That also created the speech against the imperialism of the United States that have helped other countries like Cuba to stay in power. And Daniel Ortega is very easy to blame the United States. Not the United States not involved in many ways, but at this point it's not. Nicaragua was a poor country that was out of the radar of the United States. There was nothing there they wanted. And as a matter of fact, Ortega's government was cooperating very, very nicely with the U.S., even with the TPS. He had an agreement that to help expel from the United States those Nicaraguans that were given a temporary residency after the Hurricane Mitch in 1998, which I covered too, in Honduras, Nicaragua, and all that area of Central America.
So let's go back now to April 19th. When did the pensioners, the elderly people, they're protesting peacefully? Did the military come and beat them up? Did they just shoot them? What happened?
Well, the first day when they beat up the elders on that April 18th, it was the police and what is called the Sandinistas youth that is used as vandals that attack people. The police surrounded an area. They let the Sandinistas youth to come in and give them free light to beat up everybody wherever they want, to have fun pretty much with them. It's a very common strategy in Nicaragua. But this was like phase one. Phase one was beating people up and also next day installing snipers. The second phase was when
snipers basically shooting people from buildings.
Yes, correct. They installed buildings. They installed snipers on top of the buildings. These snipers, when they asked for permission to get in the building, if they were not given permission, they shot the people in that house. And in one case in particular, they burned the house with kids inside. And they waited outside to shoot them when they were trying to escape or to shoot anybody trying to put up the fire. It was very savage. The people starting to defend themselves by building barricades to stop the paramilitaries from coming into the neighborhood. They will dig out the cobblestones from the streets to build these barricades and defend them 2 terms a day and night. That became a real problem.
When you said the people, who are these people? Is this happening across the country? Is this in one city? Is this a town? Is this the students putting?
It was across the country. It was across the country. There was, I think, at some point there were 150 strongholds around the country. This is a country of 6 million people that is smaller than New York City population.
So how many people do they say are, on average, are being killed, arrested? Do you have any statistics on what's going on there right now?
It's hard, but at some point it was 6 people a day.
This is the government killing 6 people per day, protesting, and the protests are still going on to this moment, protesting that elderly people are not getting their pensions.
That was the beginning. At this point, people want much more. They want Ortega to go because they can't put up with a government that killed their people. The more the repression, the more the rage, and the bigger the protest. At this point, they're in phase 3. They already went with the paramilitaries and heavy military machine to took those barricades out with bulldozers and RPG-7 and gun machines. They were shooting unarmed civilians with heavy military machine. And in theory, that resistance is not there because they have chased people out of the country. There is 2 weeks ago, there were 25,000 Nicaraguan refugees in Costa Rica, and at that point, they were registering 500 a day. The ones left in Nicaragua, they keep going out in peaceful demonstrations. They're very determined to have this revolution peacefully, no matter how many people the government killed.
So when did you leave for Nicaragua? When did you go to Nicaragua? Where did you go? And tell me what you saw with your own eyes, your own cameras, your own firsthand experiences there.
I knew something was going to happen around July 26, which was the 39th anniversary of the Sandinista revolution. And I wanted to go early to start preparing stories to publish that week. For the previous 2 weeks is when they sent this paramilitary army by the thousands, literally, to places where I was there. I talked to the people. I saw there were neighbors, feeding neighbors. There were students, there were doctors, and they were hand-making their own weapons. They didn't have any weapons. There were some rifles that people have in the countryside, but in general, they didn't have that many, even old rifles. They were melting pipes and filling them up with gunpowder, lighting up with a lighter to throw at them. The women were using baby food, Gerber, these little jars that comes with the baby food. And the men were filling them with marbles and gunpowder and glass. And that's what they threw at the military as bombs, at the paramilitary, sorry.
Were you the one with the camera taking these videos? Were you next to the cameraman taking these videos?
I took some of the videos with my phone and some others where I think you have a couple that were taken by the students in the university on Facebook Live. Themselves put them up and tape themselves saying goodbye to their families because they were being shot and they really thought this was the end.
Yeah, let's watch this. We have a tape of some of the students in the barricade. It's very disturbing.
Mi teléfono ya se va a apagar.
Solo estamos nosotros.
Por favor, ayúdennos.
Estamos nosotros, aquí quedamos solos todos nosotros.
Quedamos solos, quedamos
Aquí nos vamos a morir entonces. No hay nada que hacer. No hay nadie.
Mamá, Mamá, perdóname. Salí a defender mi patria. Te amo, ¿oíste?
A la mía que no la veo desde abril, que salí de mi casa en Estelí. Si logra ver esto, díganle que la quiero mucho y que no me arrepiento de nada. Morir por una causa. Patria libre morir, mamá.
Now, do you know what happened to these kids? Did they survive?
These kids, after that, they were able to take shelter in a church. The paramilitaries sieged that church for 16 hours, shooting at it. And there were priests inside, and some local journalists too. There were about 200 kids inside. There were 2 people killed that night. The students from the university that took shelter in the church, they took with them all the gunpowder and the handmade weapons they had, and they were keeping at bay these paramilitaries. It's not that the weapons they have, they are that powerful. In all these 4 months, only 2 people have been killed by those handmade weapons. But they're very scary and they keep you back. I was on the phone with them while they were inside the church being shot. And many of them, after that, have been arrested in their houses by paramilitaries and tortured.
Now, Mercedes, we have a tape. I'm sorry I was interrupting you. We have a tape, though, of this actually happening, and I wanted to show it and then hear your reaction to all of this. You've been a war correspondent for a very long time. Did you ever see situations where the government was firing on its own people inside of a place of worship, a church?
I have never seen this kind of brutality where you have 200 kids inside of a church with the priest and everything. And this is a capital. It's not an isolated village or a place. It's the capital of Nicaragua, Managua. And the police is protecting these paramilitaries around. I was there. I saw it with my own eyes. And it was very clear how this game was working. At that moment, the government of Ortega was denying there was any paramilitary. Later on, he said that it was organized by the opposition. And eventually, in the last interview he gave, he said they are voluntary police. If they are voluntary police, it means, well, how we know that is responding to the government. So why didn't he do anything to stop these killings, at the very least? And why did the church have to negotiate with him that the paramilitary stop shooting? I think it is very clear.
So were you ever in danger yourself? I mean, were you scared? Did you think the military was going to kill you, shoot at you?
At 4 p.m. every day, the paramilitaries went out shooting everybody that they found on the street. And that was a way of forcing the population to stay home after work. At 4 p.m., everybody made sure they were home. And one day, I was out later than that. It was 4:45, and I ran directly into paramilitary. That was a daylight, busy street. There were 6 pickup vans from paramilitaries that they have just shot 2 people next to me. The police, again, was protecting them, and they were pointing their rifles at me and my driver to make sure that we didn't take any video. You can't even look at them to the eyes because if you do that, they feel that you recognize them or you're going to do something. So you have to look down, ignore that they're killing people next to you, and pray that they don't shoot at you. But several times I have situations like that where I have the police pointing their rifles at me.
And was there ever a time when, I mean, you've been doing this a long time, where you say, oh my God, what am I doing here? This was a dumb move for me to be here. I'm putting my life at risk. Did that ever go through your head?
You know, it did go through my head, but I never asked myself what I'm doing here because I knew what I was doing there. Forgive me about this, but I think death is overrated. We're all gonna die in one way or another. And if I end up dying doing the right thing, I think it's better than dying if you run over by a car across the street.
Okay, commendable, very, very commendable. So let me ask you this. Let's go back to this TPS. that Nicaraguans, it's going to end on January 5th,
Correct.
2019. The Department of Homeland Security, Donald Trump, says conditions in Nicaragua, it's very safe to go back to Nicaragua. He intends to deport everyone who's on TPS from Nicaragua, hundreds of thousands of Nicaraguans, back to Nicaragua. You know, what would you say about all of this?
Well, the first thing I would say is that in fairness to the government, that was true until April 18. So I think there is a chance to change that with the danger of politicizing what is happening in Nicaragua. So right now, this is a revolution that belongs to the people. It would be a pity that it's politicized and hijacked by a right-wing sector. But certainly, whatever saved life and whatever helped people, I'm all for that. I think the fight is going to be longer than they thought in the last couple of months. But I do not think at all that Ortega can sustain power until 2021. I don't think the people of Nicaragua is going to stop protesting. Neither the government is going to stop repressing. I have the privilege to go to different places and see things with my own eyes and form my own opinion. But I believe that has also, that with that comes the responsibility of sharing it. And I try to share it as much as I can.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Are you going back soon?
I'm going to take a month of vacation. It's been very hard.
You need it.
Summer and spring.
Yes. All right. Well, stay safe wherever you're going. I know you go to the riskiest places. Stay safe, and thank you very much for coming on board and telling us
Thank you
the
very
story.
much for talking about this very important topic and for having me in your show and for informing your audience of what is going on.
I appreciate it. Thanks.